Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Today we are going to talk about narrative writing for grade 12 advanced. So here, let's start with this question. What is narrative writing? A narrative is a story containing specific elements that work together to create interest for not only the author, but also the reader. This type of writing makes the reader feels as if he or she were a part of the story, as if it was being told directly to him or her. So, in brief, we mean by narrative it's a kind of story. So when we say write a narrative, it means to write a story. Each story have elements. So each story has some elements. So if we are talking about stories, so there are many elements for the story. What are the elements of the story? The who, what, where, when, and how outline that gives the narrative direction. What is the story about? Event unfold as they happen, the frame of the narrative. Now let's start with enticing opening to capture the reader's attention or interest. When you start writing a story, okay, you can't just start writing direct away like this. No, you got to start your story or narrative with an interesting and exciting sentence that will attract the reader's attention. Okay, you got to reveal the setting of the story, and we are going to talk about this later. What's meant by setting? Setting, it means the time and the place of the story. Okay, you got to introduce the main characters. Who are the main characters of your story? Either the hero or protagonist. And also you got to show the conflicts. Who is fighting against who, or who is fighting against what? So what's the plot structure of narrative writing? It's the characters, okay, which comes in the middle to resolve the conflict or the problem, and then the action itself will progress step by step till we reach what we call the climax. So the climax is the highest point of the story, and we also call it the turning point of the narrative. Why do we call it this name? Why is it the turning point? Because when we get a problem in the story, we find that instead of going straight away for the actions, they start to curve and move up. What does it mean the actions move up? It means the action gets more complicated and complicated and complicated till they get to the most exciting and most complicating point of the story, which we call the climax. And then just after this, the actions start to fall down. So it's a turning point. Instead of going up for the actions, they start to go down. And it could also be called, it reveals the process involved for the solving of the conflicts. Okay, so here, when it happens or the solution appears, just before this we have the climax. And it could also be defined as the most exciting point of the story, the top of the action, the top of the problem. So if you're talking about the climax, or if you are asked about the climax, what is the climax? The climax, it means when the actions of the story get most complicated, when the actions reach the top of excitement, the top of tension. So at this point we call this the climax. And here we come to the end of the story. It tells how the resolution of the conflict have affected the character. Okay, so we got no new characters or plot ideas introduced. The theme or message understood by the reader. Okay, at the end it means the concluding action of the story. What is this? It means how the actions affect the characters of the story, and it also reveals the moral or the theme of the story. What does the reader get benefit from the story? And it also just give you the solution of the story. Throughout the end of the story, you just look at the solution and you get a kind of lesson from this solution. So this comes at the end. Now let's start with characters. Okay. When we talk about the characters of the story, it means that we are talking about the people who are included in the story. So they are divided into two categories. It could be the main character and sub-characters. Main characters means the most important people in the story, which we call the hero or protagonist. And sub-characters are all the people around the main character. But how can I know this is the main character in the story, in a written story, or this the sub-character? It's normal to find the main character of the story to be repeated all the time, throughout the story, from the beginning to the end. So this means this is the hero of the story. And all the people around him are called sub-characters. So the question here, characters are only people? No. They could be animals, like Tom and Jerry. We got the characters here, a cat and a mouse. They could be things like SpongeBob. It's a piece of sponge. Okay? And it could be characters, it could be real characters or imaginative characters. Okay? Anyway, the characters is a character when it is brought into life. For example, if you got an object which is a character, it should have life. It means it should move, talk like this, even the animals. Okay? Now let's talk about the setting of the story. Ask yourself two questions. Where does the story take place, and when does the story take place? The answers for these two questions means the setting of the story. In other words, the setting means the place of the story and the time of the story. As a student, how can you recognize the setting of any written story? For example, you got an exam and you want to know the setting of this story. Mostly you find the setting at the very beginning of the story, especially in the first paragraph. So here you are looking for two things. Either the place or the time. Place like what? Like cinema, mosque, school, room, laboratory, ship. Time like what? All the words that are indicating time. Yesterday, last year, last summer. So all these words are indicating time. So you are looking for two things now. Time and place. That's what we call the setting. And if you just watch any movie on TV, you will find at the very beginning of the movie, written on the screen, Washington 2014. What is the director trying to do here? He's trying to tell you the place of the movie is Washington, and the time of the movie is 2014. So the setting should be very clear. Okay, it should picture, okay, the place for the reader. Now let's move to the style. What style is the story written in? Here we are talking about the figurative language. What is figurative language at the first place? It's a kind of style in which we make our written story exciting, attractive, by using some techniques like simile, metaphor, ono, alliteration, hyperbole. So all this make our story very exciting. So every student has his her own style and technique. Although we have the same topic, everyone will write in a different way. It's normal, very normal, to find different forms, different styles of writing stories. So someone will use simile, another person will use alliteration, another will use onomatopoeia. Okay, so it depends. So each one has his own style in writing a story.